In this video, we're going to be going over some of the basics and fundamentals to performing a successful squat. So some of the reasons we want to be going over the overall squat movement and why we want to break it down a little slower is to ensure that we are preventing injury in the long term, that we're going to build that positive strength over time and not reach a plateau too early. And then we're also building longevity, both for in the gym, outside the gym, as well as at work. A lot of these techniques that go along with squatting are going to be transitional into other movements. They're going to help out with movements on the fire ground and other movements in the gym, which are all totally relatable. One of the first things we're going to start with the squat is actually with our foot placement and our footwork. So traditionally you'll hear people talk about how you would want to have your feet in line with your shoulders and your feet pointed forward. This is great and works for a lot of people. This is going to be something that one size does not fit all, and you're going to have to play around with what works best for you. For me, I like my feet a little bit further apart than shoulder width, and I like to angle my toes out the tiniest bit. That feels nice on my hips. With my long femurs, it allows me to get a little bit lower. With our feet, we don't want to be too far back on our heels, and we don't want to be too far forwards on our toes. We want to use that whole foot and use that midpoint of the sole and not wobbling forward, not wobbling backwards. We want that nice, rigid, full foot as we go to do our squat. So if I'm in my squat position with my feet, that's step one, that's where I want to start my squat. Step two would be bracing. So bracing is going to go directly to our core. So we want to think about this as if you were about to be hit in the stomach. So you don't want to make yourself small, you don't want to suck in, you want to expand your stomach and that cavity with as much air as possible. So as we breathe in, we want that to be nice and rigid. We know that's nice and rigid because we're trying to push out on the sides of our stomach or our abdomen. So when we poke that and it's tight, you'll know that. If you poke that and you're not braced, we can just kind of go in wherever we want. Nice and braced, we're not going to have a lot of movement. This is going to lead into keeping our backs nice and healthy, not a lot of spine issues down the road. And if we start squatting, it's going to lead into other faults that we'll go over a little bit later if we're not bracing. So we've got our foot position that we like, we've braced, and the next step is going to be making sure we stack. And by stack, I mean we want everything loaded on top of the next thing below. So my shoulders, I don't want them too far forward because now I'm not stacked. It's not on top of everything. I want my back nice and upright. Shoulders are stacked over my torso, over my hips, over my knees. So with that brace, feel that. I want to draw in the tiniest bit just so again, I'm stacked from top to bottom. A lot of times you'll see people take that big breath in, they'll brace, and they'll almost overextend, which is gonna lose some of the rigidity in that core, and it might be fine at lower weights, but as soon as we start to get heavier and heavier, that's where it's gonna break down, and you're not gonna be able to lift as much, you're gonna start hurting yourself. So we get into our position, again with our feet, we brace, then we stack, make sure everything's tight, and that's when we're going to actually start to build into our squat. So our first step, after we've done all the prep, is to shoot our hips back, keeping our back straight, core engaged, trying to keep that still as stacked as possible. And that's when we start bending our knees, balancing if we need. Now this is about 90, and this is great. If you can go lower, that's awesome. One thing we want to watch for is what we call a butt wink. And your butt will actually slide inwards, almost rounding your back a little. That's something we want to avoid. So get to here, get to here, get to here, and then we rebound up. Reversing that whole process. In this section is what it might look like when we actually lose some of that rigidity and we get into that butt wink territory. So we've done everything we need to do. We go into our squat, we get nice and low, everything's good. And sometimes as we get lower, people like myself as well will start to butt wink. You might have seen that, you might not. I'm gonna really try to have it almost drop. So we're rigid, life's good, life's good, life's good. And then as we get low, we almost it almost dips in. And we want to try to avoid that. So for someone like me who has to really actively fight that, as I'm squatting, everything's good. I'm really trying to focus that I don't lose that. So here's where I have to start fighting that, to not do that butt wink, to get as low as I can. And again, over time, that's going to keep my back safe, strong, healthy, especially with the larger weights. We want to be avoiding a lot of that shearing tension going on within our spine. That's the whole idea of the bracing, staying stacked, to keep everything doing its proper job, and we're not having these little shearing moments that are going to cause issues over the longer period of time. We want it tracking over our toes. We don't want to be standing in a position where our knees are so far out that we start to lose that midfoot on the ground. And we don't want our knees caving in so much that, again, we're going to lose strength and put ourselves at a higher level of injury. We get into that position, we want our knees over our feet, whether your knees go past your toes or not. Not a big deal if they go past, not a big deal if they stay right over the foot. That's going to depend a little bit on your actual anatomy, but it's okay if your knees go past your toes. It's okay if they stay over your toes. Again, the main thing we want to be focusing on is that our knees are in line with those toes and we're getting to that good proper positioning. So again, hips are back, staying stacked, knees start to bend, and this is where we're doing everything in unison. Continuing to go down. As we're going down, we've been squeezing our butt and our legs tight, 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 as well as keeping our core. When we get to the bottom, you may feel a slight release in some of your muscle and ligaments, just so that you're able to get into that position. That's kind of telling you that as we rebound, we want to squeeze as much as we can, going back to the top position. So everything's set up, everything's good. Squeeze everything on the way down to remain tight. Squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. And then when we feel that little bit of let go in our ligaments and muscles, we drive back up, continuing to squeeze. And that's going to lead us into any other all squat movements, even just bracing movements later on when we talk about pressing as well. Squeezing muscles that you might not think you need to be working to make that movement successful. So if you're someone who is trying to deal with their overall squat depth, they want to get to that 90, maybe a little bit lower, a good thing that you can use is either a box, recycling bin, some other way to measure where you're going to go and sit down on, maybe even a chair, or even a medicine ball of some sorts, or a wall ball. So for me, I know that that ball is going to get me just a little bit below 90, and I can use that with my squat, and I know that when I'm able to sit on it, that's going to be a good marker for me, knowing that I've squatted to full depth. So same thing. So even as I'm doing this right now, I notice that when I squat, I almost want to stop and return to the standing position 3 inches or so before I actually hit the ball. And that tells me that maybe I need to do some more work with this just to, again, build that muscle memory of where my depth needs to be. So again, some of these things may seem basic, but they're gonna build those healthy habits and making sure that you aren't gonna get injured and you're doing the right things and you're gonna get stronger, more confident, more capable. And up. And that's just how you can use a medicine ball to kind of help you gauge some of your depth, build a little bit more confidence, and then just slowly get better over time with that. If we are doing, let's say something like a front squat, whether that's with a barbell or a dumbbell, nothing really changes with that overall movement. The front squat with something like a dumbbell will actually sometimes help you stay in that more upright position that you want to be in. But again, nothing changes, I should say. So we've got our foot position where we want it. We're gonna brace next, and then we're gonna make sure we're stacked. So as you do that more and get more comfortable with it, you're just gonna know where you're gonna stand. You're gonna know how your feet are gonna be placed. You're gonna know that I wanna brace right before I start that movement, and while maintaining that throughout the movement. And I also want to be aware of, again, stacking everything from top to bottom. So I've got everything in position, done everything I need to do, and the movement doesn't change. Just like that. So no matter what the weight is or how I'm holding it, there might be variances, but again, whether my arms are here, back here holding a barbell, out in front, nothing changes for that movement. I want that same pattern from body weight all the way up to whatever your 1 rep max is. As we start to add weight, whether it's a dumbbell up front, barbell on the back, we want to make sure that squat stays and looks the same. So if I am approaching the barbell and I've racked it, everything is the same. I want to get my footwork set. I want to make sure I've braced and make sure I'm stacking. The one thing that we now want to focus on a little bit more is that it's the path of least resistance. We've got the fastest path to get the bar down, to getting the bar back up. So I want to do everything like I've been practicing and keep that bar as straight as possible. If I start to do some of those faults we talked about, like my heels or toes, now the bar, as I try to fix it, is going wobbly and taking a longer path down and back up. With a back squat, we're going to get into our position, angle a little bit just so you can see. Everything is done. If I overextend, I'm now going to lose a lot of my strength. So again, feet position, great. Bracing and stacking. You might need to adjust, minor adjustments between each movement to find, again, where that optimal position is for the differences between each movement. Now we've added a little bit of weight to the bar, keeping the same steps in place for all of our prep work and then the steps throughout the movement of the squat. Nothing should change. Yes, there's more weight. However, keeping everything the same, working within my, obviously my own ability, add a little bit of weight, squat should stay relatively similar to what we've been practicing the whole time. Angle over a little bit, foot position, braced, stacked. So in a strong position, I can hang out at the bottom, I can add weight, I can do more reps, still feel good overall, getting a good workout on my core and my legs. Life is good. I start making those faults, whether it's because I'm tired, I've added too much weight too quickly, done too many reps, whatever it might be, not comfortable with the movement, that's when it starts signaling to us that maybe we need to change something, go back a couple steps, figure out our issues, and then go from there so that, again, we can have that longevity in the fire service, in our own personal lives, in the gym, so we can keep getting better as opposed to getting hurt and having to start from scratch all over again. Some common faults that we'll see with the squat. We briefly mentioned this before. Someone may get into their position, or I shouldn't even say someone. We will all at times lose our balance, think we're set up, something will happen, and next thing you know, we're on our heels, right? So I think I've done everything right. I start squatting, I lean too far back, and now all of a sudden with my heels on the ground and my toes lifting up, even that body weight, that starts to throw this whole movement off as I go down. So we really want to make sure that we're not driving into the ground with our heels. Can't even stand like that. We want to almost be trying to claw the ground with our toes while our heels are there, pushing our whole foot into the ground. So once I'm there, now I'm able to just squat how I normally would and how I naturally would. Again, if I go really heavy on the heels, I almost have to prepare myself by putting myself in a position I don't necessarily want to be in. So I would set up normally like this, life is good. I want to set up more on my heels, and I almost have to counterbalance myself and almost shoot out too far. And now I'm in a position that's not going to be overly effective. So we can see that instantly without any weight. Heavy on my heels, almost trying to balance, can't get as low. The second fault, same thing with the footwork, is if we're too much on our toes and now we're lifting our heels up off the ground. This is a little bit different with no weight because there's a lot of times throughout the day we can kind of crouch in that position and everything's okay. As soon as we start adding weight, that's where we're going to have problems. So we get in our position, leaning on our toes a little bit. Again, not as stable. I can still do that squat position, but as soon as I have weight, I'm going to be leaning forward a bit and might fall forward. So that's kind of our fault number 2. Another fault we'll see that we talked about a little bit earlier is when we kind of overextend. So not only are we losing some of that core rigidity and extending our abdomen and our core, we're also creating an over-exaggerated bend in our spine. So I want to stack normally how I would, start the movement, this is all good. If I overextend, now everything on my back is almost compressed too much and I'm shooting my butt back too much. And as we get into a low position, we're going to lose a lot of the strength that we might normally have because we can't actually get our legs to fire up out of that position because we're not strong anymore. We've lost all the power that we've created by keeping everything tight. So we keep everything tight, rigid, stacked, and I'm in like a strong position that I can just like hang out and go wherever. As soon as I get into this position and I start overextending, now all my strength is gone and my body doesn't even want to put me in that position. So that's another fault that we see. The last kind of main fault is whether we are front squatting or back squatting. And again, we almost cave in too much. This is a little over exaggerated, but we'll see people kind of try to almost get small. And again, you're going to start leaning forward and you're going to lose that balance and not actually be able to do that movement.